Good evening and welcome to the regular public meeting of the Henry County Board of Commissioners for 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, November the 20th, 2012. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. And before I ask for an acceptance of the agenda, I believe, Mr. Stamey, that there is an item on here that you wish to table.
Yeah, the item B on the public hearing for the modification of zoning conditions on Jefferson Homes of Conyers, Georgia. I'm going to table that request tonight. And Jeremy, if we could we make sure that's put on a night meeting, please, when it's rescheduled, Sherry? Thank you.
And with that change being made, I will ask for an acceptance of the agenda. Motion by Mr. Bowman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Stamey. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. I noticed, too, on the agenda we have left off the invocation and the pledge, so I would invite you to join us this time for the invocation.
Father, we come to you tonight, Lord. We thank you for all the good things you've sent our way. Lord, we ask that you protect those that serve, Lord, away, and we ask that we protect those that serve at home, Father. Lord, we ask that you be with us, that you give us wisdom, that we might make the right decisions, that we might do the things that you'd have us to do that be pleasing in your eye. Father, we ask that you lead, guide, and direct us, Lord, and you have us to be what you would have us to be, and that we handle these things that we're handling for the county as we should, Father. We ask that you be with us, each and every one. Give us a safe trip home, Father, and all these things we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda tonight is a proclamation, and it is in honor of American Indian Heritage Month. And I know we have some representatives here that will probably speak about this before we make the actual presentation. Whereas the history and culture of our great nation have been significantly influenced by American Indians and indigenous peoples, and whereas the contribution of American Indians have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas their customs and traditions are respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States, and whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976 and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Indian Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as numerous cultural, artistic, educational, and historical activities have been planned, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Henry County Board of Commissioners that November 2012 be known as National American Indian Heritage Month, during which time we recognize the important contributions of Native Americans and the rich culture that they have provided to this country, and urge all our citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities this 20th day of November 2012 by the Henry County Board of Commissioners. And I know we do have a representative here from the American Indian community and also the Daughters of the American Revolution, and I believe that this is something that you try to get accomplished all throughout the United States at this time of year. And if you'd like to come up and address this and add more information and make an introduction, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy tonight to have Mr. Alan Rowland, a full-blooded Cherokee, to accept a proclamation on behalf of our chapter. Also, we have another couple that you're going to tell your Powhatan?
No. Powhatan and also Cherokee.
Cherokee and Powhatan is Ann Franklin and
Creek and Cherokee.
Kim Osborne's Creek and Cherokee. And we appreciate this. It's very important to the DAR, and thank you so much.
Thank you. And if we have step over here to
Yes.
my left, we'd like to present the proclamation. All right, we are going to skip the update on the GDOT I-75 express lanes. We're going to move that a little lower in the agenda. We have one more individual who will be joining us for the presentation. And I was remiss in adding something to the agenda, and I'll go ahead now and ask for an amendment to a motion to amend the agenda. And you have a handout before you. This is under Financial Services, a resolution of the Henry County Board of Commissioners authorizing the creation of a position for the 2013 budget for Capital Projects Manager in the General Fund. And we had a discussion about this earlier, so you're familiar with that. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Holder, second by Mr. Bowman. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0, and we'll go ahead and hear that item now. Our presenter is Mike Bush, Finance Director.
Good evening, Chairman and board members. I appreciate the opportunity to get this added. I should have brought this to you 2 weeks ago, but I just simply forgot. We adopted our budget on May 30th, 2012 for the 2013 budget, and at the same time that you adopt the budget, you adopt a fiscal policy, and that fiscal policy says that if there are any positions that are not listed on the authorized sheets at the date of the adoption, that you have to adopt, you have to basically bring it back to you for you to approve that position to be created. And that's what we're here for tonight. We're taking our current SPLOST Capital Projects Manager and using his skill sets to do other things to help us out at the airport with the construction and expansion of the runway, things like that are going on out there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take his position, which is currently in the SPLOST program, and we're going to move it to the general fund because there are other funds like the airport and SPLOST, the capital asset funds, other funds that are going to be needing his expertise and funding his pay. So what we decided to do is to take it out of SPLOST because SPLOST has those, you can't spend SPLOST dollars on non-SPLOST projects. So we decided we would move his position into the general fund and fund his position by all the other funds that he actually does work for. And the general fund would then be responsible for vacation and sick leave because I can't charge vacation and sick leave to other funds if they're not doing any work. So there is a budget amendment attached to this for right at $4,000, $4,006 to cover any vacation and sick time that the capital projects manager will have over the next 6 months for the rest of this year, or 7 months, I guess, till the rest of this year. And it's to move a position from one fund to another, and the only monies that the general fund would have to cover would be sick leave and vacation, and we did a budget amendment to cover those at the same time as you creating the position.
Does any board member have a question or comment? Mr. Stamey?
Tanya, on the signature page, I notice your signature's not on this. Have you reviewed it?
I read it just now. I've been in court proceedings all day today, and I just got in at 6, so I didn't have a chance to read it before it got onto the agenda. But I've discussed this with Mike, and I did read it before this evening. So, yes,
You comfortable signing off on the
Yes, sir.
present resolution, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Preston?
Mike, because, I know we haven't had a ton of time to look at this, and I apologize I wasn't here yesterday, and it sounds like some of this stuff came up. Avports, is there any overlap there? I'm just trying to make sure I understand, the position. Is Avports not cover some of this? Because Ron is great at his job. I mean, I definitely appreciate his skill set, but I just want to make sure we're not overlapping,
Yeah, Avports, Avport's provided an airport manager when we originally started the contract. Since, end of October, that manager has moved to a different position, and we were without a person out there to help do the day-to-day operations and things like that, and that's when he stepped in to, deal with the construction work that's going on currently, dealing with the airplane owners and, creating a face to go with the county is what he's basically stepped in for Kevin, who is left to go to a different airport.
And does that mean, are we still paying for Avports then? And if Kevin, is there a representative from Avports there, or are we? Okay.
He may be better.
The Avport agreement only pays Avport a fee, I believe it's at $50,000 per year, only if there's a profit during that year. So their money, if any, comes out of profits. The airport budget has a airport manager. The airport manager, Avport was supplying, billed us back, and we reimbursed them. In the amendment that was, or the agreement that was signed with the amendments at the last minute that were added, stated that the county, instead of Avports, can put one in and we wouldn't be reimbursing them. So the amount of monies available in the budget to pay for are still there. The intent is to use Ron, removing him to the general fund, so that then his money can be or his costs can be allocated to the funds as opposed to originating in SPLOST and originating general funds, sending SPLOST when he works SPLOST, send at the airport or other places when his time is so put together. So the monies of his time should not be in excess of what the present budget for the airport manager has been.
Okay. And I guess I'll just leave it with, Ron is really good at what he does. I've worked with him personally on the short time I've been on the commission. But, that's the issue we're voting on today, but it still draws point to, if Avports doesn't have somebody there, and I know that we don't pay them unless there's a profit, but I know there is a minimum fee that they do accrue in the background, assuming, there is an obligation that's being built in the background. But that's not the issue that's here today, and I don't want to sidebar us, but that's the only thing I saw when I looked at this.
Yeah, that fee, again, is not due and payable to them unless there's a profit, and the budget for the airport manager is in the budget itself, which Ron would be allocated out of general funds to that airport fund.
Okay.
Mr. Holder?
Mike, I'm seeing that this funding will come from the contingency portion of the general fund, correct? It will not have any impact. I mean, the funds are there, so it won't be, you won't have to increase a budget or anything to cover this because it's part of the contingency. Is that correct?
I think we budgeted $250,000 for contingency, and it's just a piece of that, which basically means it's budgeted but not earmarked for a specific.
Exactly, for any one specific thing. Yeah, I understand that. Just want to make that clear.
Anyone else with a question or comments? If not, you have before you a resolution authorizing the creation of the position for the 2013 budget for capital projects manager in the general fund, and I'll entertain a motion.
And Chair, I make a motion to approve it, but I also would like to have some verbiage to get the county attorney's signature on the signature page to require it. Okay?
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Stamey with that condition. Is there a second by Mr. Holder? All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is under Planning and Zoning. We have a public hearing, a modification to zoning conditions MC-12-06. LNC Partnership of McDonough, Georgia requests a modification to zoning conditions for properties located on the north side of Jonesboro Road, east of McDonough Parkway, in land lot 125 of the 7th District. The request is to modify multiple zoning conditions. The property is located within Commission District 3. Our presenter is Jeremy Gilbert, Planning and Zoning, Exhibit Number 13. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and board members. The property that is in question is what is outlined here on this exhibit that I've put on the overhead for you. The property is located on the north side of Jonesboro Road, just east of the McDonough Parkway, and it's approximately 3.66 plus or minus acres. The applicant is requesting to modify conditions number 1, 3, 4, and 5, and delete number 6 in its entirety from a rezoning request that was approved by the Board of Commissioners on March 6, 2001. The applicant is requesting to modify these zoning conditions that regulate development and design standards that would include building materials, sign restrictions, exterior lighting, dumpsters, enclosures, and planted buffers. And this is all to accommodate a potential end user that the applicant is seeking to modify these conditions. What I've placed on the overhead is the existing conditions with the strike-throughs and the modifications that the applicant is requesting. On condition number 1, the applicant is asking to add split-face concrete block as a permissible building material, and then also allow metal as an architectural accent only. On condition number 3, the applicant is asking to remove the existing condition that says all principal identification signs shall be ground-mounted on a pole and consist of brick, stone, or stucco, or any combination thereof, and are asking for a master sign plan to be required for the development to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Department. On condition number 4, the applicant is asking to remove a statement in the condition that requires all lights to have motion sensors or to be motion activated for properties abutting the residential neighborhood, and to also increase the overall height from 15 feet to 22 feet. Staff would also like to point out that this board did adopt an outdoor lighting ordinance in January of 2012, and it could be, this condition could be just removed in its entirety and require the applicant to meet what that ordinance is that was adopted earlier this year. On condition number 5, the applicant is requesting that the minimum height of the dumpster enclosure be reduced from 8 feet to 6 feet, or tall enough to shield the dumpsters, whichever is greater. And then they're asking to remove condition number 6 in its entirety, which requires a 50-foot planted buffer of evergreen Leland cypresses buffer between the boundary where River Trace Court Commercial Park will end. Staff does not make any recommendation on this, but I will entertain any questions and answer anything that I can.
Does any board member have a question or comment for staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Holder?
Jeremy, if you would, as far as condition 4 is concerned, how does that relate to the lighting ordinance that was passed earlier this year?
What they're requesting would be consistent with the lighting plan. The outdoor lighting ordinance we adopted earlier this year does not have a requirement for censoring, but it does require that all lights be of moderate brightness. It requires they have to submit what the foot candles are. We limit the amount of intensity that the light can be depending on how close they are to residents. The closer they get into residential development, the less the lighting can be. So what they're proposing at 22 feet would be appropriate until they start getting closer into the residential development, and then it may be limited, and that's why staff's offering up, the closer they get to residential, that height can come down.
But that would be controlled by staff and would be communicated to the applicant prior to approval of a lighting plan, is that correct?
That is correct. The ordinance would require that they submit an actual lighting plan with their construction plans, and they would have to meet the current ordinance requirements if the board chose to amend it to just require what the ordinance requirements are.
Madam Chair. Chairman, we did something unique when we did the Aldi store. Remember, was it something that after so many hours at night, those lights, were they reduced again?
I believe we did put something on the Aldi one. I don't have that information with me, but I believe we put something on that rezoning that required at a certain time that their lights either decrease in intensity or be completely turned off. I believe the condition that this one was originally was that it's, at a certain point, the only way the lights would come on was something, cross that path. So, I mean, again, those are definitely options that are still in play for the board. But I'd leave that up to the applicant, as to, what their reasoning behind wanting that alleviated is.
Okay.
Any further questions for Jeremy? Mr. Preston?
I noticed that Jeremy, that some of they're vacant, undeveloped currently, but there's R3 on some of the properties, and we're taking away, or the request is the 50-foot evergreen buffer. What happens in the future is, you know, I mean, I know residential is pretty much shut down at this point, but we're seeing some signs of life.
It's already there.
Okay, there is a buffer already, okay.
Yeah, the interesting part with this is this parcel was all zoned residential at one point, and then it came back in piecemeal. It was to be a subdivision that continued all the way on to Jonesboro Road. As the market changed in the early 2000s, they rezoned the front half with the exception of the wetlands. As illustrated in our current zoning map, it shows all the property being zoned residential on the east side of what would have been River Chase Road that would have extended to Jonesboro. But we found the rezoning file that will correct that, and they have the correct zoning for the portion that they're looking at. So the buffer that is in place is already off-site. I think in this case, the applicant who has triggered the need for this request is developing closer to Jonesboro Road and didn't want to have to put any additional buffers on their piece, but the buffer would actually be a lot further north than where they're looking to develop. So it's something that I don't know that they would have an objection to if the buffer is already there, and I believe the property owner is here that can say that that buffer is in place currently because the detention pond for the development is up at that location. So I believe there's adequate buffering there now, so it may not be a need to even remove that condition.
And then the only other question I just had was on condition 1 with the split-face concrete block. I mean, does that have, you know, just keeping up with standards and how things, is there any detriment to going with that versus the typical masonry items that we see listed?
I don't believe so. They asked just for it to be added as a specific use. It would be classified as if we just said it had to be masonry. That would be a permitted masonry product that the county has allowed.
Any other questions? Mr. Bowman?
Split-face block is all along Jonesboro Road anyway.
Absolutely.
I know Kroger's got split-face blocks. Several of the others have split-face block, which is CMU units. So it's very compatible. I mean, it's already up and down Jonesboro Road.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members? At this time, I'd like to ask if the applicant or their representative would like to step to the podium, and if you would please state your name for the record and add any additional information that you'd like to add. Good evening.
My name is Sean Gleason. My address is 260 Peachtree Street, Suite 900, Atlanta, Georgia, 30303. I think Jeremy did a pretty good job of summing up our request, so I think I'd be better served just answering any additional questions that the board has.
Does any board member have a question for the applicant?
I have one.
Mr. Holder?
In our meeting prior to the meeting, did you get an answer about the motion sensors?
I did. The concern with having the lights completely cut off and dimmed to a significant level is that for an establishment that's open 24 hours, having the lights completely cut off doesn't indicate to customers that the establishment is in fact open. What Jeremy mentioned is us maintaining the lighting levels that are consistent with the zoning ordinance and the lighting levels that you adopted earlier this year, and I think that's consistent with what we plan on doing.
But you have no problem with complying with the ordinance that we recently adopted by keeping the candle power down next to the residential units, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Bowman?
I noticed that there was a question that one of the other commissioners brought up about the Leland Cypress, and I understand this is commercial, and I understand what's going there, and I understand the proximity to the street. But should anything be changed or developed to go back in there, would you be amenable then to establishing a buffer? I understand that the retention pond or detention pond, whichever one that is you feel like that's probably good enough one, but let's just say that for whatever reason you should move further back, we would probably we would like to have buffer there simply to protect those neighbors. Now, knowing what you're putting in there, I don't see you moving any further back. So I don't think that would be an issue. But in the event that you did, I would think that we would want you to establish some type of buffer on that back line.
Right, and Jeremy can probably speak to this a little bit better than I can, but I believe that the county ordinance has a buffer in place for dissimilar uses. And so the concern is that that buffer should be in place just by the county ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct. The county ordinance will require that there be a 40-foot buffer. I think the way the condition reads now is it has to be Leland cypresses, and alleviating that condition would still require, once development is done in that area, it would have to maintain and meet that the 40-foot requirement.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, at this time, I'm going to ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the applicant's request. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the applicant's request? All right. If there's no further questions,
I do have a
Mr. Stamey?
Jeremy, I remember several years ago when we was talking about drive-throughs, this will have a drive-through. I thought drive-throughs were only liable in C2 and C3.
Under the previous zoning ordinance, that was the case. Drive-throughs were only allowed in the C2 or C3 zoning district, but upon the adoption of the Unified Land Development Code, it does allow restaurants or any other use that has a drive-through to be in C1 or C2, as well as C3.
What about a bank? That still would apply?
Yes.
Okay.
Any additional questions? All right, if not, Mr. Stamey, this lies in your district, and I'll look to you for a motion.
I make a motion we approve it with the 4 modification changes.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Bowman. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Madam Chair, one other comment. It was quite entertaining to read this thing with all the history. Mr. Holder was the only one originally that was attached to this thing, 11 years ago. So a lot of history in this one right here. You didn't have to share it with us today.
You have to endure it.
I didn't have to endure it.
Chairman Mathis, if I could clarify for just a second. On condition number 4, was that to leave it as what was proposed in your resolution, or to change that to the language of requiring the applicant to meet the current zoning ordinance, or the current ULDC for outdoor lighting?
He would have to meet that. He said that earlier. He would already apply to that. I thought that was already in the record. By all means, to include that.
That includes that.
Thank
Do
you.
I need to modify my motion to include that lighting, the new lighting ordinance?
Do we need to rescind the motion or just modify it? Okay.
And the previous.
I'd like to
Commissioners,
amend the motion to include the lighting verbiage.
we have a second by Mr. Bowman. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. So that since Mr. Stamey doesn't want a history lesson today, I see Mr. Wall is out there, and there's quite a story that goes along with this property, and you see him shaking his head. His father has some real issues with Henry County because we did not do what we said we were going to do, based on the commissioner from the district at the time. Is that not correct, Mr. Wall? And that was used against us, and it happened in my office that Mr. Wall and Clayton, John, all of them sat down, and Mr. Wall said, I don't believe you, when we were talking about extending King Mill Road, which ended up going through their property, and we got the right-of-way. Obviously, it made them money because it split their property, but they didn't have to give it to us. But he didn't want to deal with us because we had not done what we said we were going to do on this piece of property. Is that not correct, Clayton? And I wished Mr. Wall could have lived to see that we did do what we said we were going to do on the extension of King Mill Road, but he didn't. And I hate that. But anyhow, that's your history lesson for tonight, Randy.
Appreciate that, sir. I knew there was one in there.
Well, we have some guests with us tonight. I'm going to back up on the agenda to the update on the GDOT I-75 Express lanes. We have some guests with us today from GDOT, and I know that their time's very valuable, and we're going to go ahead and let them present this information to us. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Darrell Van Meter, and I'm going to give you a little update. About a year ago, we were here briefing you on this project, and we told you at that time we would be back, and we're back. We want to give you a little update. I'm going to flip through some of these things. There's a few things of background. I'm just going to jump right into the project location information. Bottom line, the project is along I-75 in Henry County, right in between McDonough and Stockbridge, between 155 and it goes up north to 138. The project includes basically mainly 2 lanes. It transitions from 1 at the entrance points to 2 lanes, and then I'll show a slide of exactly where the lanes fit into the interstate. The project length altogether is about 12 miles, about 9 miles of actual 2-lane. There will be a dedicated access at Jonesboro Road, and there will be intermediate slip ramp north of 155. This is direct access from the actual interstate. And then there will be easy transition to and from 675. And this is a little map, and it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but there is a package or a handout on the fact sheet. Can you hear? I don't have a clicker, so. Okay. It's all right. I've got a fact sheet that illustrates a little more closely if you want to take a look at your fact sheet. The bottom line, this illustrates obviously between McDonough and Stockbridge where the congestion lies on the interstate through here, and it illustrates what I'm talking about. Now, this is kind of a cross-section that represents the 2-lane and the 1-lane segments of the roadway. If you kind of notice that the managed lane system will be barrier separated in the median, and then the existing general purpose lanes on the west side of the freeway will be relocated to the west so that there will be room in the median to be able to receive the new system. Now, it is being operated as a reversible system. That means that in the morning, traffic will be in the peak direction, which will be northbound, and in the evening, it'll be operating in the peak direction, which would be southbound. And in between those times, there would be clearance times, gates would go down to prohibit wrong-way movements, and so forth. So this is a depiction of kind of what to expect as far as the cross-section of the roadway. Now, the next part of it is the fact that it is a tolled managed lane project, and this is where we'll utilize tolling to be able to moderate the demand so that we can strive to always achieve a minimum speed of 45 miles per hour. Of course, emergency vehicles, registered transit vehicles would be able to be exempt from the toll, but basically all other vehicles in the express lane would be tolled. And again, the variable toll rates would be utilized on the project to be able to, depending on what the level of congestion is in the lane itself. The tolls would, of course, be collected by electronic means, not by a toll booth or any sort of stop-and-go type of thing. We call that the Peach Pass. So it would be operated through the State Road and Tollway Authority. The update that we really have for you tonight is in the first quarter of next year, we expect to go to a public hearing. We're about to wrap up our environmental process, which is an environmental assessment. We expect to get public comments on the project's details, and we wanted to especially get you all a heads up. You know, when you start getting questions about it, you'll at least have a little bit of an idea of what is coming down. We will be, of course, continuing our public involvement, and we already are in the beginnings of our procurement for the project, utilizing a design, build, delivery approach. And we expect to get bids in May of 2013. And there's some hotline information for you or any of your constituents if they'd like to get an update or go to the website or phone or however it is. And I've got Mr. Kelvin Mullins with us, our project manager from GDOT, that can answer any questions or give any briefings that need to be briefed if within your specific communities. And that is.
People have been curious about the construction going on around the interstate. We have quite a bit going on right now with the replacement of the Jodico Road Bridge. but also just to note that the extension of the entrance ramp of Eagles Landing Parkway from Eagles Landing up to 675 is not part of this project. It will certainly help to alleviate a lot of congestion, but it is a separate project from this.
Yes, indeed. In fact, originally, both that project and this project was a part of the legislature's bond appropriation, and I specifically tried to extract them so that improvement could go ahead on a quicker schedule, since it is really an auxiliary lane, a simpler project, and we're glad that it's making the progress that it is.
Absolutely, and they're making tremendous progress, too, on the Jodico Road Bridge. I'm impressed with how far they've gotten along in just a short amount of time.
Yeah, we're excited with them, the way they're moving, too.
Does any board member have a question or comment? Mr. Arletta, County Manager?
Just want, because I was part of all the hearings and the time with the citizens over there, but the issue was, and I believe it has been resolved, but for the public to know, the exit was going to be on Mount Carmel. Is that correct? And it has been moved to Foster?
It is, yeah, that's right. It was considered, but discarded, and now the access will be on Jonesboro Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's, the citizens, I don't know if they ever did get the final on it, but I know they believe that to be the case, but I thought at least hearing it from you when you present it would be good, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that they'll see with our public hearing with the environmental document as well.
Okay.
Any questions? Mr. Holder?
Darrell, were you here with Gerald Ross last year when this presentation was made?
I was not, but I think this gentleman was.
Okay. When asked the question, was there any other plans for improvements along I-75, Mr. Ross quickly said absolutely not. I questioned the fact, was there anything going to be done south of Highway 155? And I want everybody to look at the maps. Once again, GDOT stops at McDonough as far as assistance. But the point is, Mr. Ross quickly said, absolutely not. There are no plans. And you go back and check the record. And I'm going to say this almost verbatim. There are no plans for any improvements along I-75 to exit 212 for the next 20 years. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there may not be, but when traffic backs out onto I-75, trying to get off at exit 212, trying to access Tanger and other things along that interchange, and here it is 2012, and he's saying that there's nothing to be done in 20 years, I question that. I won't be here. But once again, I'm going to take one more shot at GDOT, because I want you to look and see how many state funds have been expended from McDonough to the south along state routes. And I want you to also see how many dollars that have been spent in our local SPLOST programs to improve signalization, intersections and complete signalization along state and federal routes. US 2342, I mentioned it earlier about the King Mill in US 2342. State put absolutely zero into that interchange. 155, US 23, Georgia 42, in 1999, 100% was funded by Henry County SPLOST. When that occurs, then we as commissioners don't have funds to do dirt road paving. We don't have the funds to do intersection improvements along our county roads because we are spending the funds along state and federal routes. And I know, hopefully my successor is here tonight, and I hope he has a better rapport with Georgia DOT than I have had, because if anybody questions what I'm saying, all you have to do is look at the record. And I want you to see how many dollars have been spent from McDonough to the north and how much has been spent from McDonough to the south along state routes. I want you to go back and check also right out here at I-75 and Highway 155, find out who paid for the signalization of that interchange. One of the last interchanges along I-75 in Henry County to get signalization. Go back and find out who paid for it. These are things that have really bothered me. And obviously, I have not done a good job in conveying that to GDOT, because we've really had very little assistance to the south. And I want the record, you're welcome to check our records with our finance, SPLOST, anybody you want to, and you will see that in SPLOST 3 that we are currently in, Mike Bush can verify this, I believe. I can't give you the actual number, but in percentages, about 25% of District 1's transportation dollars went to intersection improvements and signalization along state and federal routes. Am I not correct, Mike? That's correct. So, do I have a problem? I do. And to say that we're not going to do anything, I know that's getting off of the lanes. Don't get me wrong. But the point is this. When Gerald Ross stands at that podium and says that nothing will be done to the south for the next 20 years, something's wrong with that, people. I don't know what it is, and I hope my successor can do a better job, but something is wrong with that.
Okay. I'll definitely take your comments back to our planning director, Mr. Toby Carr. Again, my job is to deliver what is in the plan. And
sometimes the messenger
gets
shot.
That's all right. That's all right. That's what I'm here for.
I'm beginning to understand why Gerald is late this evening.
And by the way, Gerald Ross is a resident of Henry County, too.
That's right. That's right.
So,
the only thing I would suggest, I think that as far as other projects that are planned and programmed, the program continues to evolve and so forth, and Toby has a job every year to be updating things. One of the main issues that we're talking about with respect to the managed lanes, which is here, is the fact that it really addresses the additional lane capacity. And speaking from many times having to deliver this message, there's a lot of times that we would like to add more lanes, but the managed lane concept is really what the board has settled on to be able to address congestion. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be an improvement, even like the auxiliary lane, or an operational at the interchanges, and so forth. But that may have been more where Gerald was coming from the standpoint of an additional capacity.
I would invite you to go back to and review the meeting when he was here. If I said something that he didn't say, I would appreciate you letting me know, because those were almost verbatim, the remarks that Mr. Ross made. What his intent was, I can't answer that. I'm just telling you what was stated.
Yeah.
Mr. Preston, you had a comment?
The only thing I would add was just to piggyback on what Commissioner Holder was sharing was I live near the Locust Grove and the Tanger exit, and we have a perfect opportunity this coming week with, the kind of the 30% of retail sales occur after, with the Thanksgiving and Christmas, and Tanger is kind of in the southeast. That is what we're known for to a large degree. I was out in Disney World just 2 years ago, and when we were checking in, she says, "Where are you from?" I said, Henry County, near Locust Grove, and she goes, "Is that where the Tanger outlets are?" I mean, it is one of those things where it really does spill onto the interstate, and it concerns me for safety and other issues, and it's just something to be nice. I know you didn't come here to have us talk to you about this, but it's still something, it helps sometimes to look at the issues and look at what Warren's sharing.
I'll commit to you, Madam Chairman, I'll talk with Mr. Toby Carr regarding our discussion here and bring this back to him. Okay?
Well, and one thing, we're going to have to, and of course I'm on the GRETA board and we have the GDOT board as well. With the limited transportation dollars that we have, we're going to have to be very strategic on where those dollars are spent. And with the port deepening that will be completed, I think, in 15 or 16, somewhere along that line, and I encourage y'all, if you have an opportunity to go to the GRTA website and look at the presentation that was given to our board last week, you're going to see container ships coming into that port that are 3 times the size of the ones that are currently coming in. Those container ships now are carrying about 4,400 containers. The larger ships will have over 12,000 containers on them. And so Georgia is a very popular port, and we'll be seeing an increase in freight traffic on our interstates, and it's going to have to be addressed. But it's a huge economic engine for Henry County and the metro area. I think 70% of that freight comes off at the port is headed for the metro Atlanta area. So the conversation is going to be continuing, and we're going to have to look at solving the congestion issues, especially as it relates to freight traffic coming through our area. It's only going to get worse. So those are decisions that will have to be made in light of the limited dollars that we have. Absolutely. I know Gerald was not here today, and I really wanted to thank him for his years of service to GDOT. He's retiring after 30 years. December 31st, I believe, is his last day, and I'm sure his job is much like ours. You never walk away from a meeting with 100% satisfaction, but he has done a great job, and I know Michael Harris has commented on how much he's appreciated his help throughout the years. And so when you have an opportunity to speak to him, will you please convey our congratulations and our well wishes for his retirement?
I will do that.
Wonderful. And thank you for the presentation this evening.
Very good. One last note, the project schedule, May of 13 for letting to the contract, and it'll be a few years before the project will open to traffic, but we will be under contract in 13.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is under Public Works. We have a request for approval of an ordinance amendment regarding stormwater management. Our presenter is Butch Oliver, Stormwater Director, Exhibit number 15 in your books. Good evening.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. You have in your books an amendment to the stormwater ordinance to clear up some language that stormwater can work in the county right away. But before we get to that, there was a couple of errors that I want to point out to you that we need to bring to your attention. On the very first page, at the top, right here, we should have brought down where it says sections 3-549 through 3-511 should have been brought down to this right here, and it wasn't done. That needs to be corrected. Also, on page 2, that should say, instead of city, it should say county. On page, I think that's 6, the bottom of it's cut off. It's either 6 or 8. At the bottom, in section 503-504, it should say shall instead of may. And then page 7, the word city comes up again. It should be county. I want to bring that to your attention. And those are the corrections that should be made. Other than that, the ordinance is to allow stormwater to work in the county right away. That's about it. If you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Having this discussion, I know for several years now about having the ability to utilize stormwater funds to work in the right-of-way, and our ordinance did not allow us to do that. And this particular amendment will allow dollars in stormwater to be freed up for some of the work that we talked about in reference to drainage pipes and things of that nature. So
and there's a lot of failing infrastructure, especially in the north end, but don't shoot me, Mr. Holder, but in the north end.
We had this discussion yesterday.
Yes, sir.
There's no question about it.
Does any board member have a question or comment for Butch? If not, you have before you a resolution to amend Article 3 of the Stormwater Management sections that are referenced 499 through 511 with the corrections that were indicated in mainly typos on that. And if there are no further questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Have a motion by Mr. Holden, a second by Mr. Bowman. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no one signed up for public comment. Ms. County Attorney, anything for public session?
No, ma'am.
Mr. County Manager, anything for public session? Upcoming meetings and events, Thursday, November 22nd, and Friday, November 23rd, all county offices will be closed in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. Monday, December 3rd at 9 a.m., a workshop meeting, and Tuesday, December 4th at 9 a.m., we have a regular meeting. Monday, December 17th at 9 a.m., we have a regular meeting. There will not be a meeting on Tuesday, December the 18th. And we would like to wish you and your family a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving. And if there's no further business to come before the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion by Mr. Bowman and a second by Mr. Holder. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Before we turn, do you want to recognize the...
Oh, I'm sorry. We do want to recognize we have some Boy Scouts with us tonight. And what troop number are you with? 61. Well, we appreciate you joining us tonight, and hopefully you learned a little bit. I'm assuming you're here for one of your badges, or for one of your patches. Okay, wonderful. And where are you guys located? McDonough. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here tonight. All right, and with that being said, we stand adjourned.